In these recent years, we can see that Mazda has been trying to prove to the masses that they can push up to a segment above and compete with the likes of Acura, Lexus, and maybe even BMW. To me, because of the powertrain in this car, I think they almost did it. However, I have to be honest, when I learned that Mazda was coming out with a two-row sporty SUV, I thought we would be getting the smaller CX-60. Even though this isn't exactly what we were hoping for from Mazda, I still think this is one hell of an SUV. And today, I'm going to show you why. Welcome! I think it's worth it to walk a little bit down the memory lane of Honda's Mazda. If you didn't know, Mazda's been making MPVs since the 90s. Their original minivan or SUV was called the MPV. It of course competed with the likes of the Honda Odyssey, Toyota Previa, and other vans of the time, but as Mazda grew up, they not only made the MPV an actual minivan, but they also started to come out with SUVs as well. Their first SUV was actually based on the Ford Escape, and this was called the Mazda Tribute, which was the predecessor to the Mazda CX-5 that we know today. A little bit later in the years, they came out with the CX-7, which is what I would say is the predecessor to this car. It was a two-row SUV. You could either get a 4-cylinder or a V6 from Ford. I really don't see too many CX-7s nowadays, but they are still around. After that, Mazda wanted to introduce a 3-row SUV to compete with the Honda Pilot and Toyota Highlander, so they brought us the CX-9. Of course, even though it was a Mazda-based SUV, Ford owned Mazda at the time, so it did have Ford engine parts, and various parts throughout the interior resembled Ford. The CX-9 survived 2 generations after it was killed by the CX-90, the same thing that this one is pretty much. Now you may be wondering, what's the difference between the CX-70 and the CX-90? I pardon your ignorance because it looks the damn same. If you do put your glasses on, there are some minor differences. The front bumper is slightly different. The front grille is also black, which I like on the CX-70 rather than the CX-90's chrome grille. But the main difference between these two SUVs is that there's no third row in the CX-70, while the CX-90 has a third row. So it is the same car, but it is a different car because it doesn't have a third row. This beautiful SUV standing next to me is the 2025 Mazda CX-70 3.3 Turbo S Premium Plus in the beautiful Soul Red Crystal Metallic. This really is one of my favorite colors that Mazda offers on their cars, and I'm happy that I finally got my first press car in this color. The MSRP of this thing as it's sitting right next to me in its full spec glory is $58,000. Just like the CX-7 that preceded this, these are built in Japan, but instead of the Hiroshima plant, these are built in Mazda's Hofu plant. Now, if you're not looking for the top shebang CX-70, Mazda thankfully does offer 4 other trim levels for this SUV, starting at the 3.3 Turbo Preferred, 3.3 Turbo Premium, then the 3.3 Turbo Premium Plus, then the 3.3 Turbo S Premium, and then finally the 3.3 Turbo S Premium Plus. And if you want to spend even more money, Mazda offers a plug-in hybrid version of this that of course gets better MPGs while still offering pretty impressive performance, but that thing starts at $54,000 and it approaches $60K in a loaded one. Again, just like the CX-90, the CX-70 is available with 2 different powertrains in the US. There's a plug-in hybrid that uses a 4-cylinder and electric motors. You still get very good MPGs with this 3.3-liter inline-6. So under the hood of the CX-70 and the CX-90, we have the D engine. I tried to find an engine code for this engine, and it just shows up as Mazda's D engine. It's a 3.3-liter inline-6. Of course, it is turbocharged, and it is paired to Mazda's mild hybrid system. In this application, it makes 340 horsepower and 369 pound-feet of torque. The M Hybrid Boost system uses an 11.4 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and it gives power to an electric motor that's sandwiched between the 3.3-liter engine and the the 8-speed automatic transmission. This isn't the typical Mazda 8-speed though. Unlike a normal automatic transmission, this doesn't have a torque converter. This uses a single wet clutch. It's not a dual clutch transmission. Mazda said they mainly did this to save space for the footwell for the driver and passenger. This whole assortment of technology gives the CX-70 an MPG rating of 23 in the city, 28 on the highway, and a combined rating of 25. Those numbers are very accurate because I've been seeing between 25 and 26 MPG while I've had this with my heavy ass foot. This uses Mazda's latest version of their iActive all-wheel drive system, and in this case, thankfully, it's an actual rear-biased all-wheel drive system like a BMW X5. It really does feel like it because it makes the rear wheels chirp. Of course, it uses a multi-plate clutch pack in the center that appropriates torque between the front and the rear, but unlike some other vehicles like the Acura MDX for example, it doesn't have a torque vectoring rear axle. That just means that it doesn't shift power from side to side. It still handles shockingly well though because it also has a stability control system similar to the same one in a Miata. So this is a big Miata. One thing I hope Mazda does different the next time around for the CX-70 is make this a little bit smaller. I do appreciate the added legroom in the rear seat, but I wish that they made this shorter than the CX-90 because this is only an inch shorter at 200 inches long, which makes it about the same length as the current gen Honda Pilot, and it's only about 4 inches shorter than the Toyota Grand Highlander. In my eyes, because this is a 2-row mid-size SUV, it competes with the likes of the Honda Passport, which is 189 inches long, and the upcoming Nissan Murano, which will be 192 inches long. I do appreciate this effort of a 2-row SUV, but I wish it was just a little shorter. As you can see, this 3.3 Turbo S Premium Plus model is riding on these 21-inch alloy wheels. Mazda actually makes many different versions of their large platform SUV. So it's not just the CX-70 and the CX-90 that exist in the world of these SUVs. Mazda actually also makes a CX-60, which is actually the SUV that I wish they brought here. That's a car I would actually buy. But Mazda makes a big SUV only for Europe. That's called the CX-80. Even though 80 is bigger than 70, the CX-80 is smaller than the CX-70. Again, the CX-70 is 200 inches long. The CX-60 is 14 inches shorter than this car, 186 inches long. The CX-80 is 196 inches long, so it's shorter than this, but it has the same wheelbase, and that difference is the trunk is smaller in the CX-80 compared to the CX-70. And again, for the sake of confusion, the CX-70 is the same as the CX-90. Something about these modern age, sporty and dynamic driving and designed SUVs is that utility is kind of a compromise. It's not too bad in this car actually though. As you would expect, the CX-70 has a power tailgate with a hands-free kick function. I just don't have the key on me, it's inside the car. But it opens quickly. I'm glad it opens faster than some of the other cars in its market. Behind here you get 39 cubic feet of volume behind the second row seat, and thankfully Mazda provides us with buttons that drop the second row seats with power. And then if you do that, you get 75 cubic feet of volume, which is a very usable amount of space. On the other side of the trunk there's a power outlet with 3 prongs, which is nice. I can plug in my laptop back there, but I cannot sit here comfortably in the trunk because the car is pretty shallow. Because this is a 2-row now, thankfully Mazda provides us with an abundance of space underneath the floor. Not only just right here, but even beyond that, there's an even deeper well of storage. Aside from that, the CX-70 is rated to tow 5,000 pounds in its inline-6 configuration. You can also see how quick the tailgate is to close. Getting into the back seat of this 2-row SUV, thankfully, because this is such a big crossover, I'm 5'9" and there's an abundance of room back here. You can see the rear seat is actually very comfortable. I have a few inches of legroom. The driver's seat is in my seating position. I have great headroom, even though this has the big panoramic moonroof. Of course, this rear seat still slides fore and aft, just like the CX-90, that's 3 rows. It is a 60-40 split rear seat. There's also an armrest in the middle here, which is very soft two nice cup holders, thankfully. I really love this tan Napa leather that this CX-90 has. It feels soft. In the middle, it's like a suede material that's perforated. This rear seat also does recline. Believe me. Oh, there we go. Oh. In terms of other comfort items back here, there are rear sunshades, so you don't have to look at the people that don't have rear sunshades. You also have the two air vents in the back above the two USB Type-C ports, and thankfully there also is a climate control for the rear seat passengers. I also like that these two outboard rear seats are heated, but not cooled. Fit and finish while you're inside of the CX-70 and the CX-90 is pretty good. The only thing I will say though is that from the inside and also the outside, well, the inside not too bad, but from the outside the doors don't have much of a solid feeling. They're a little bit light for a more luxurious SUV. I do appreciate all the different colors in here. It's very visually stimulating in a positive way. Because it's really hot, I'm going to go up front to the air conditioning. I now welcome you to the interior of this two-row CX-70. Now, of course, it's very similar to the CX-90. First of all, thankfully this vehicle does have a smart key access system. I will say, I wish that the rear doors had the smart access feature as well. It's only the front two doors, but here's the key fob that Mazda uses currently. Hopefully you can see that. It's just like the Volvo key fobs, but you know, of course it is different. The lock, unlock, trunk release, and panic button are on the sides of the key fob itself. But because of this, we have push button start, so we can keep this anywhere inside the car, put our foot on the brake, and press the start button to hear that engine roar. Nice. So again, welcome to the front seat of the CX-70. It's very nice in here in this Premium Plus trim. I like the tan interior, but I just hope it doesn't get too dirty. Since I'm talking about that, the seats are quite comfortable and they're pretty supportive considering that this is a normal SUV. Thankfully, the driver and passenger side seats are heated and ventilated, and the ventilation function works very well. Thankfully, both seats offer a full range of power adjustments, but the driver's seat only has two-way lumbar instead of four like some of its competitors do. Aside from that, it's very nice. We have a 3-spoke leather-wrapped steering wheel. I like that it's two-tone. It feels very nice in the hand. There's also buttons on the wheel as well. On the left side, we have some audio and Bluetooth controls, as well as the info button that scrolls through a bit of the information in the digital gauges, and on the right side we have the cruise control and the driver assistance setup buttons. The horn thankfully is good. As we look up at the gauges, they are full digital on this model. They look very nice, just like the CX-90. There's two main configurations that you can have these gauges in. You can have the traditional analog design, or you can press this far button for the cruise control. It has a different design that's more driver assistance focused. The gauges do change depending on what drive mode you're in, and there's a sport mode, normal mode, and an off-road mode. Behind the steering wheel, we do have paddle shifters, and on the left side of the wheel, you can see that the headlights are automatic, as well as the windshield wipers on the right side of the wheel. I really like that this steering wheel is power tilt and telescoping. That's really nice. And because of that, you have memory for not only just the driver's seat and the mirrors, but the steering wheel as well. As we look at the center, this is the main display for the CX-70 using Mazda's latest infotainment system. It's all right. I mainly use Apple CarPlay. It looks fine. I've seen nicer looking infotainment systems, so this unfortunately isn't one of my favorites. I'm mainly an Apple CarPlay. This also does Android Auto, both wired and wireless. It is touchscreen, but only when you're using Apple CarPlay. If you try to use the normal Mazda system, it doesn't work. You have to use this rotating dial that Mazda has been using for a few years behind the shifter. Below the infotainment screen, we have dual zone climate control up front here. I like that it's all physical buttons. Nothing related to the HVAC system relies on the screen, thankfully. Unfortunately though, the screen is a little bit far to reach, so I wish that it was a little bit closer, but a lot of the dashes in these new cars are so delicately designed. Underneath the climate control, we have a wireless charger. There's also a car charger on the right side of that. We have the drive mode select, and then behind that we have this electronic shifter. It's better than some of the other ones, but it does take some getting used to when it comes to putting it in park. When you put the car into reverse, we have a 360 cam in very good resolution. There's many views for the rear view camera as well as the front view camera. You can see the exact top-down view. You can also see what the front wheels are doing. It's a very clear depiction of everything, so you better not curb these 21-inch wheels. On the right side of the shifter, we have two kind of small cup holders, and again, behind all this, we have the assortment for the infotainment system. So we have a volume knob on the right and the main dial in the center. The center console is unfortunately kind of small. There are two USB Type-C ports in here as well. It's just on the shallow side, but it opens in two ways like this. The armrest is thankfully nice and soft, with more of the tan stitching on the sides of it, but it feels very nice. Up top, we have a frameless rear view mirror with garage door home link, but it's not a digital mirror like some other cars. Now, besides the LED lights in here, I think we're ready to take this for a drive. So welcome to the CX-70 driving experience. This has really been a treat to drive, and I will say I'll miss it after it's gone. It drives great, and it doesn't suck gas like some other cars when you drive them hard. This one, it's actually quite impressive. We'll be getting onto this more quick road, so I'll pop myself in sport mode, and we'll see what this puppy does. You can see this has front cross traffic alert. That's very useful. Okay, we're ready. I don't know if that's a cop or not, so I will be more cautious. This thing really does drive nice. We will be getting on. Thankfully, I have no one coming. You can see it's really good. It gets to speed very well. It's fun to drive, and it has a good sound to it as well. I really like this powertrain. In sport mode, it's actually very eager too. This does have the iStop technology, which is Mazda's stop-start system. Because of the mild hybrid system in this car, it actually thankfully does work pretty well. Doesn't bother me too much. Of course, you can thankfully turn this system off. I'll go into normal mode because I'm behind NPCs, and then the car just gets a more relaxed demeanor. I won't go off topic though. The start-stop system may be confusing to some because this one is actually very proactive. Like right now, I'm coasting and the engine is off, which is nice. That's how it saves the MPGs, but sometimes there is a slight delay when it comes to hitting the gas and getting the gas engine to wake up again. Otherwise, it's actually a pretty well buttoned down system. On this smoother road, the ride is quite nice and smooth, even though this has 21-inch wheels, but this does ride stiffer than some of its competition, and it is noticeably jitterier on certain bumps. They gave it that firm ride to be more sporty, so I understand it, but it is a bit of a compromise if you want to drive this more comfortably. The transmission also at lower speeds can be a little bit herky-jerky. It likes to be driven hard, actually. I mainly notice the herky-jerkiness when I'm in start-stop situations, like stop-and-go traffic, or if I'm in parking lots, or if I'm just getting going at home, like in my neighborhood. Otherwise, when I'm driving, the shifts are smooth, very quick. I barely feel what the transmission is doing. It's only when you're going slow. You can see this road is a little bit bumpier, and you just feel more of the road. I do like how heavy the steering is. Only sometimes though. I wish in normal mode the steering was lighter, because sometimes it just takes a little bit more effort than I'd want if I'm feeling lazy to drive. In sport mode, this is how I'd like the steering to be. It's very sharp and responsive, and it's actually even a little bit better in sport mode itself. If he goes straight, I go right. If he goes right, I go straight. Okay, finally. It's a very smooth powertrain even when you're on the throttle. It's a willing engine and good transmission, honestly. This engine is also just worth listening to. I can throw myself into sport mode now and we can see how this thing handles. The brakes are good, but they're not that great. This thing has a body motion control system that works well. It's the same system that they use in the Miata, and it's to eliminate much body movement. It's good. It's great. It's really good. This body control technology that they use, it really does work because I'm not moving around much in the interior compared to some other cars I've been on this same stretch of road. It's actually good. It handles great. We can do a UE here. Has an impressively tight turning circle. You can see this thing likes to chirp the rear wheels. In sport mode, it feels like it sends some more power to the rear. Unfortunately, I'm stuck behind another NPC, so we can relax again. But it's a fun to drive SUV, and it makes driving it makes driving fun, easy, and also safe, because it really grips the road well. I appreciate Mazda's efforts of trying to push outside of the box and be more luxurious, and they definitely have done it, but there are some little things that I feel they have to address before I really think it's even an MDX competitor. They have the driving dynamics on point. I really like how that feels, especially because this is rear biased, but it's just in terms of fit and finish, and it's just little things. Overall, the CX-70 drives very well. As you can see, it's an enjoyable driving experience even though it is a bigger SUV, but I wish it was a little bit smaller. Thankfully, behind the wheel, it doesn't feel too big. Visibility is pretty decent. Thankfully, this has all kinds of sensors everywhere, so you mustn't crash. I'm kind of rambling, but it is a nice to drive SUV. I just wish that it felt a little bit more refined. It's just a little bit more rough and dynamic, which I like, but sometimes I want to be soothed as well in my SUV for such an expensive price as well. It's not like it's out of the ordinary, but it is out there. So that, my friends, brings us to the end of our day with not Thomas, but the Mazda CX-70. Between this and the CX-90, I would actually get the CX-90 because it's more useful to me with the third row. But I do prefer the styling elements of the CX-70, but it's all stuff you could do in the aftermarket anyway. I won't go too much on a tangent though. I appreciate you watching all the way through this video if you have. Hi. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for many more videos like this, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, peeps.